Good. Thank you everybody for joining. I think those joining is slowing down a bit. We have 79 participants. Please stay muted. Wait, can you guys hear me? All right. We'll go ahead and jump right into the agenda. Introductions will not be conducted. Again, if you do speak, please introduce yourself. That greatly helps with the minutes. And I'm so glad I won't be doing those anymore. Please expect future minutes to be severely condensed. Any additions or changes to the agenda? We will be having a short line rail update as part of the CTC report. And FHWA will be going before CalCog. Antonio has another meeting to get to right at 3:30. Any changes, anybody? I can see probably about 20 of you at one time. Is there an approval of the meeting minute notes from the prior meeting? Any objections, corrections that need to be made? I see some few head nods. I'll take them as accepted.
They look great.
Accepted, good? All right, thank you. RTPA committee appointments for this next fiscal year. As part of the agenda here, I included this last fiscal year's current committee representatives that I wanted to share with you all since it is a new fiscal year. I do want to make one change, and that's to nominate Gabriel Gutierrez from Tulare COG to replace Don Bates of Sandag for the Local Streets and Roads Needs Assessment Committee. And also for the ATP program Technical Advisory Committee, I'll be replacing Philip Chu, and Don will be stepping up as the for the RTPA alternate. Other than that, I am asking that everybody on the current committees, if you guys are kind enough to continue serving, that would be greatly appreciated. If not, then send me an email and we'll deal with it.
Hey, Yvonne, did you catch that I wanted to be removed as the alternate for the HSIP?
All right. And then I think Ross was gonna find out some details on who's serving on that. So I'll get with Ross and take you off of as the alternate, Jose Luis. Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else on this item here? I think we're good. If there's any issues, send me an email. We have 84 participants joining today, so I can't see all the faces, even on our big screen here. I guess you can raise your hand and chime in or chat. I did, if you notice, I did change of how we're laying things out on the agenda. I do want to start off with the RTPA committee reports. Again, thank you so much. If you're kind enough to serve on a committee, the least we can do is hear your reports and not be rushed. And with that, let's jump right into it and start with Dawn. If you have anything to report on Local Streets and Roads Committee.
Yes, I just wanted to, I'll try and be very brief, but we met at the end of May to look at the preliminary results of the survey. So just to refresh everyone's memory, the survey extended almost to mid-May. We had about a 79% response rate, which, you know, considering COVID, was actually quite respectable. This year's survey also included the bridge updates, the preliminary analysis, a couple of highlights. Responses by miles look very good. We received data on about 92% of the miles. And then we had data on almost all the other 8% from previous year surveys. There are only 5 agencies that have never responded, and they only account for about 110 miles. So data for the overall survey on the lane miles is really pretty solid. And now we're up to about 90% of the miles that are reported are included in a PMS of some sort. There does look to be a slight improvement in the PCI statewide, and it does take an awful lot to go up even a point, considering our huge number of miles. Impacts of SB1, about 10% of agencies said it looks like it's enough, but 90% said no, it's not enough. And considering that COVID was just kind of beginning when a lot of the folks were surveying and some had submitted, I imagine that 10% is probably going to think right now that it's not enough. There are some troubling trends, some unintended consequences, including supply of contractors not meeting demand. Average unit cost increases look like about 30% for seals. Overlays increased between 22 and 29%. And reconstruction costs have increased about 28%. So these are just very preliminary kind of highlights of what the survey results are starting to show. The next meeting is September 25th. And typically this group sees a presentation by the consultant and by the chair of the committee. And we'd like to do that in January. And that's it.
Wow, PCI went up. Wow. Any comments or questions for Don? All right, Patricia?
Okay, so the HSIP committee, Highway Safety and Advisory Committee, and the Transportation Co-op Committee both met on July 23rd. And a few highlights, but not nearly really the whole meeting because a lot of things get reported on here again. So I'm trying not to step on FHWA, Caltrans, et cetera staff. But for under HSIP, the obligations for federal fiscal year 20 so far to date as of July, we're at about 125 million and may go as high as 140 million by the end of the year, which means that they are obligating more than a single year's worth of funding. So they're eating away at the balance and very little is left. Regarding the model inventory of roadway elements, or MIRE, a contract between Caltrans and UC Berkeley has been executed using some leftover planning funds from HSIP to assess data and storage needs, et cetera, to be MIRE compliant. HSIP Cycle 10 deadline has been extended to October 16th, 2020, and early submittals are encouraged. Caltrans may go back out to the local safety road plan awardees and provide additional funding to larger jurisdictions, either based on their road miles or their population or some combination of both. So we're looking at numbers right now. So that's it for the HSIP. And for the Transportation Co-op Committee, I would note that Miguel Ramos of FHWA provided updates on inactive projects, timely obligations, and billing for CE invoices before construction contracts have been awarded. And I think FHWA is coming on today, so I don't want to say too much more, but if you want more information, feel free to reach out to me. We have minutes and I'd be happy to share them. Miguel Ramos also reported on the final rule on NEPA, and Caltrans staff cautioned folks in the group to wait until FHWA's guidance has come out, and also may need to seek, not seek, but wait until Caltrans specific guidance is available before going whole hog into implementing those guidelines. And then one other thing I would mention, Kelly Hobbs of Caltrans discussed categorical, now I always forget which one is exclusions and which one is exemptions. Let's just say CE for, he said that Caltrans takes an average of 321 days to go from a PES to a CE, a signed CE. And it's 170 days if no bridge is included in the project. So that's kind of useful information to know in, planning out the programming and the scheduling of your project or your agency's project in your area. And he said that 97% of projects were cleared with a CE last year. So those are the highlights. And like I say, reach out if you have anything else you'd like to know. I'd be happy to share.
All right. Any questions for Patricia? Thank you so much, Patricia. Elizabeth? Elizabeth?
Sorry about that.
Oh, that's fine.
I muted both the phone and the computer. Not a good idea. Anyway, just here to give you an update on the strategic highway safety plan work. We've had committee meetings very frequently these last few months since the steering committee has gone to the executive leadership committee with their initial findings for a first stab at various actions planned for implementation of the SHSP. The executive leadership, is represented by just about every agency on the book here: DMV, CDHP, EMSA, OTS, CHP, CALSTA, NHTSA, Federal Highways, and on, including the RTPAs, by me on the steering committee and by our executive director at STANCOG on the executive leadership committee. One of the outcomes of the recent meetings is that the management reps have asked that the project team include some guiding principles as part of screening criteria for looking at the various actions that have been developed so far and for those coming down the pike. And so they really, there's a strong emphasis on doubling down on what works, meaning putting energy toward those proven countermeasures that are already well established as effective. Also accelerating advanced technologies and identifying opportunities for rapid deployment. Implementing safe systems approach in the SHSP with, more holistic approach that considers safe speeds, road users, vehicles, and so forth. And finally, integrating equity into all aspects of the SHSP with consideration of all who will benefit from the proposed actions, who is potentially adversely impacted or affected by the action, and what the demographic data says about each of the various actions. So these guiding principles will serve for screening for the first 45 actions that have been identified. And the list of actions includes a broad range of topics. For example, some of the projects that have been proposed include, linking vehicular crash data with medical outcome data in a better way, identifying a preferred method of developing high injury networks for pedestrians, pilot studies, various types of pilot studies, using devices on projects, using technology to alert workers to escape when errant vehicles enter a work zone, and expanding the use of retroflective backplates, and increasing outreach and education to college-age students about reckless and distracted driving. So that's just about 5 or so of the 45 or so action items that have been identified. They're still in the process of determining whether they're going to move all of those forward, so they're in the process of going to screening. The next steering committee meeting will be held on August 20th, and then the executive leadership meeting will be held on September 27th.
Okay.
So that's pretty much what I've got. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Elizabeth? Thank you all for your committee reports. Really appreciate it. Local assistance updates. Dee Lamb and Mark Danielson.
All right, it's Dee speaking. Okay, so local assistance team is here. The office chief, we selected a few bullet points here, or topics to share with y'all today. So Robert Nguyen is going to share about our obligation authority delivery. Heidi Borders, she'll share our at-risk preliminary engineering status. And Mark Samuelson will definitely share about project data access, a really big topic at the TCC. Robert Peterson is going to go ahead and share about the Highway Bridge program reform and any updates that we have. as well as the SB 137. Kelly Hobbs will definitely chime in on the environmental matters, and then it'll be a wrap for the local assistance update. Of course, we'll take questions. So over to you, Robert.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. All right, so let me run down our latest status of the federal fund obligation to close out this federal fiscal year. At the beginning of the federal fiscal year, we started with about $1.25 billion of federal funds. As of yesterday, our current balance is about $25 million. So out of this $25 million, there's approximately 15 million waiting for federal highway approval. And there's about $70 million worth of projects in Caltrans headquarters queue waiting to be processed and sent to FHWA. The reason why we haven't sent it to FHWA is that we don't have enough OA balance. So all these projects are going to be sitting in the queue. We're going to process them, get them ready for August redistribution. So in addition to that, we have another $40 million worth of projects sitting in the district queue being processed. So overall, we have more demand than capacity. Late last month, local assistance submitted a request to Federal Highway for an additional $65 million of August redistribution. So this is on top of the $1.25 billion that we received this year. Typically, target for distribution is usually the last week of August. So it's going to come up in about 2 weeks or so. So, we don't know exactly if we're going to get $65 million or $0. We just have to wait and see. Last federal fiscal year, local assistance, we requested $192 million of August redistribution. And we ended up receiving about $121 million. So it could be 100%, 50%, 30%, 0%. Who knows? There's no logical way to guess how much we're going to get. So the deadline for local agencies to submit projects to the district has already passed. That was July 24th, and the deadline for the district, Caltrans district, to submit projects to Caltrans headquarters is August 21st. And the deadline for Caltrans headquarters to transmit all these projects to Federal Highway is September 4th. And FHWA would have about 2 weeks after that to process all the projects that we submit to them. So usually the federal the financial system shut down, about the second week to the third week of September. So I'm looking at maybe September 18 is when the system is going to be shut down. Once it's shut down, that's it. No more project going through. We are done. And then Federal Highway would have to clean up their system and do whatever they need to do. And they're not going to reopen the system again, until about maybe, first to second week of October. So there's a lot of work in the next couple months, and it's exciting time for Caltrans and FHWA. We always trying to maximize every single dollars that we receive from Federal Highway. So I think this year is going to be another year that we're going to successfully deliver our program. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Any questions? Next.
This is Heidi. I'm going to report on our at-risk preliminary engineering office bulletin. That's the policy that's going to allow for reimbursement of preliminary engineering expenditures that were incurred prior to an authorization. That policy I've been saying should go out by the end of the month. I got an email while we were in this meeting saying that it's scheduled to go out to go out tomorrow. But so let's hope that it does. You know, so if you don't see it tomorrow, the next day, but it's definitely on its way out the door. So we'll have that in place soon, and it'll be ready to be utilized. All the forms and databases that we need to implement it will be in place. So that'll be great. And while I've got your attention, I'm going to plug the timely obligation item. I think Miguel at our last meeting had mentioned that they were tracking invoicing. The very first invoice on a project needs to come in within 9 months, or it's flagged as being not timely. And our delivery rate in the local program has been pretty low on that one. So I've been talking to our district local assistance offices and encouraging them that should they have any project that hasn't processed their very first invoice on that project, to just basically find a way to get an invoice processed through whatever those roadblocks that are in the way, to find a way to work around them and get that first invoice processed. So I'd like to encourage you guys to get a hold of your local office, or get your agencies to get a hold of your local district office if they, district local assistance office, excuse me. If you have a project that hasn't processed their very first invoice yet and they're coming up on that timely issue, just get a hold of your local office there and just find a way to get the invoice processed through. It'll help a lot. So thank you. Let me know if you have any questions.
Any questions for Heidi? Nobody has their hand raised. Who's next, Dee?
Mark, I'll be reporting next on the data access. So this is an item that was brought up, and we've been working with the Transportation Co-op Committee to gain, and the purpose of this is to gain more real-time data to help track the obligations, monitor inactives, and to monitor the timely obligations that's just mentioned previously. And so there's definitely some interest in getting some real-time data to monitor these obligations. And so in working with the Transportation Co-op Committee, it was asked if there could be read access to our FADS database. This is the database that we use in Caltrans for the authorizations to getting read access. There are some concerns with getting read access to this database, which are, this would require on having to go through Caltrans firewall. And then also getting access to our database for those that are truly savvy. Our FADS database is connected to other databases. And so giving access to the one would be giving access to several other databases within Caltrans. So those are some of the challenges. And so in working with the FADS database owners and our IT security to see if this would be a possibility of giving read access out, there was a suggestion that came up with that we think that may meet this need of real time. There was a suggestion that we can create a web portal in which the agencies would be able to register themselves to gain access to a data access into our FADS database. And what this would be is that you would register as an owner, and then at the time that you would like to monitor your obligations or your project, you would submit in a request using your email. It would then generate a report or a data dump, and that would be sent right back to the email address of the register. And this would allow a little bit more protection on not having to allow access through our firewall, but then it would allow the ability for you to access it on when you need that information. So this is all concept, and this was discussed at the last Transportation Co-op Committee. We were working with Ross and Patricia on this, and it was suggested to go ahead and reach out to a larger audience. So what we're going to be needing to do next is to develop a type of subcommittee. How are we going to make this work? And also we need some input from you on what is the data and information that you need to be reported out so you can monitor your obligations, your inactive, your timely obligations. How would we be able to get that data and put it in a package that would be useful for you to use? So we are hoping to form a subcommittee, and the ask from this group is that if you're interested in participating in that, in formatting on how these reports would look like, we're definitely open to those names. After this meeting and after we get some of those names for the subcommittee, I will be scheduling a kickoff with our FADS database owners and our IT to see about how we can generate these reports to gain that real-time information. And so with that time, that's the ask. And I don't know if Patricia or Ross wants to add anything to this effort as well.
Ross, are you on the call?
I thought it was.
Okay, great. You want to go ahead first?
Oh, sure. So kind of some background on this. It goes very in depth as to what information we will be accessing. And it's mainly to facilitate delivery, both of apportionments and OA. And if projects kind of get stuck in the process, whether it's environmental or right-of-way certification, that the RTPAs can kind of notice that in advance and perhaps step in and help with any log jams so that projects can move forward. We're seeing that a lot of projects kind of hit various milestones and kind of stall, and that impacts overall delivery for all the federal programs. And so this is kind of to help us be more proactive in ensuring that projects move forward and that we're aware of it in advance. It's also so we know that projects are having difficulties in terms of inactive obligations and timely obligations, so that we, rather than finding out after they're on the inactive list, perhaps there's a way that we can track it as they go through, and if there's no progress, we can step in and remind the local agency, hey, your invoice is coming due. Let's see what they can do to ensure that they keep on track and we don't even have projects on those lists. And there's a lot of other different uses for this information, and it's great information. All the districts have it. And what we're seeking here is the ability for the RTPAs to also have access to that information that would facilitate them and help them in delivering the programs that they help oversee. Tricia, do you have anything?
Yeah, I just want to add, Ross is the MPO representative on the TCC, and I'm the RTPA group representative. And I think this is something that Ross has actually been working on for many years, but I took an interest as well. And the two of us have been kind of raising the issue several times at the TCC committee. But we tend to be doing most of the talking on it. And I think it has to do with the composition of the group. There are a lot of implementing agencies in the group, as well as, like Caltrans and that FHWA that don't have this issue about wanting more access to the data. So we thought of bringing the issue to this group for consideration, and to look for volunteer members to work on this effort and try to provide some good input to Caltrans in creating this useful access tool. We kind of thought maybe the RTPA group would have more other RTPAs, MPOs, regional agencies that are managing programs of projects for a large set of other local agencies. So we would welcome some good participation from other members on this to get a real useful tool.
Patricia, maybe you get between you and Ross can frame up the inquiry and I'll blast it out.
Okay, do some
feedback. Okay. All right. Anything else? Thank you.
Thank you.
Who's next? Robert?
Yes, thank you, Ivan. Yeah, a couple things. Dee will be talking about some other things in the programs, but I'll just touch on the two that I've been asked to report on. For safety, for the SB 137, I shouldn't say safety because it applies to bridge, but yeah, SB 137. we're almost at the finish line on that. I think I shared with it at the last meeting with you guys, or before that, you guys sent a couple comments in, so I incorporated those. At this point, I been talking to Rick Tippett. As you know, he's oversees CSAC or SEAC president, and so he said he's going to craft a letter with the support from the League of Cities and CSAC, basically showing their support on the priorities and how, as far as how we're going to go about administering the program. And so once we get that, then we can check that box saying that we've completed according to the legislation. So in the meantime, our intent is still to use the funding for this next federal fiscal year for safety. Whether it will be the $100 million, that's our goal. But obviously part of the legislation is the budgets has to agree that we can do that exchange. So it's up to 100, but we're hoping that we can utilize the whole $100 million for the safety program. So that's it for SB 137. So once I get that letter, and then I can report out as far as working on the guidelines and the guidelines and the procedures. My staff is working on that. So once the projects are announced, that we'll be ready to go as far as exchanging those funds. As far as the Chapter 6 reforms, as others probably are aware, we've been working on the reforms. We've had webinars. The 9 proposals that we have come forward with, 7 have been agreed to by the local HBP advisory committee. The two of the ones that they haven't agreed to, as far as the proposal, was the high cost bridge cost project limit, and also the as far as approach roadway costs, as far as that proposal. So those are the 2 that are still outstanding, but the other 7 they agreed to. And there's a couple things they wanted tweaked on, but by and large they wanted to make sure that the wording and the guidance. So we're working on that. Next week we have the committee meeting. And so there will be continuing discussions with the other final 2. I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Dee, was that it from local assistance?
We've got Kelly on the line. So Kelly, did you want to chime in?
Yeah, so I just wanted to add some numbers to Patricia's totals. She talked about the 321 days for all project types. That's the duration of time in days for average projects. But I wanted to drill down to a few more types. And that's signal projects are taking about a 131-day average. Roundabouts are at 113 days. And the simplest jobs of all pavement are coming back out at 56 days. So I just wanted to mention that with the TCC group, we're looking at a list of projects that have had delays, and we're trying to get to the bottom of project delays, what causes them, whether they're internal, external, and we just want to learn from those projects and see if we can do better. I do want to mention too that right now we are working on an updated and virtual version of the Federal Aid Series Day 2 session, which is environmental procedures. And that should be, Sac State is pushing us pretty quickly to get something out. They want something done in the next couple months, but they want us to do 4 of those in the next year. So we're working on that. And Dee, unless there's any questions, I'll send it back to you.
Good.
Awesome. We'll definitely stand by to take any questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
I guess the other thing I would just really quick, Yvonne, the real quick thing, and as probably a lot of you may know, so tomorrow I'll be giving just a high-level overview of the Highway Bridge Program. So we do have an agenda item at the CTC meeting tomorrow. Really, it's give a broad kind of a breadth overview of the program. We'll do a dive into funding. We'll do a dive into the demand. We'll also touch, again, high level on some of the policy changes. And then we'll round out that presentation. So I'm looking forward to it. Definitely a lot of questions. So we'll have the team online. We'll provide all that we can provide. Really, it's, again, it's an informational item, but there needs to be, some level of awareness on the need.
Okay. All right. Thank you, local assistants. Bill, if you can hold on for a bit, we're going to let Antonio with FHWA give his report. Antonio Johnson.
Hey everyone, and I'll be quick. Number one, so Tasha, my director of planning and environment, is out until September. So if you have been sending her anything or you need to send her anything, just send it to me. If you email her, my email address will come back. If not, antonio.johnson@dot.gov. In terms of staff, we're still down 2 community planners, but I do have good news. I have 1 senior community planner starting on Monday. In a couple of weeks after he get acclimated, I will send out his contact information. But for those who would like to know, he will be responsible for the RTPAs and NPOs located in District 3, 4, and 5, minus Santa Barbara area. And he will also be doing some air quality. And I think that's all I have for right now. And I'm open for questions if anybody have any.
Thank you, Antonio, for being here today. Appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you.
Senor Bill. You're muted. There you go.
Got it. Hey, hello to everybody. Thank you for letting me join. I'll be pretty quick for you as well. Just a few things to point out. First of all, just business keeping. I think we sent out something to the RTPA group, but a reminder that we are recruiting for our 3rd class of the Regional Academy for Regional Leaders, the California Academy for Regional Leaders. Carl, many of you are alumni on this call. We are looking to start it off virtually this year, but we're investing in some tools and some things to make it more exciting than an RTPA meeting, guaranteed. Hopefully. Thank you for the response. So anyway, applications are due next week. Some of you have already reached out to me or Julia Johnson, but if you need any questions, just shoot me a text, email, or any other means you have of getting a hold of me, even Morse code. All right, I was going to hit on a couple of bills really quick. First of all, our favorite bill, SB 1291, the FSTIP bill, is sailing through the legislature. Yesterday, it passed out unanimously on the consent calendar on the Assembly Transportation Committee. I don't foresee any problems. I expect that bill to be passed, signed, and the changes to the timeline made. That said, many of you on this call are involved in the group that is still planning on doing the FSTIP by next April or May. And that is probably for somebody else to update you on. The other bill that was in the Assembly Transportation Committee yesterday of note was SB 1351. This is the bill that would allow Caltrans to do some bonding on the transportation improvement fee or the vehicle fee in SB1 that goes and funds the shop. Originally, the way it was written, the league and CSAC had some issues with it because it could have obligated the entire TIF to guarantee the bonds. That has been changed. However, at yesterday's hearing, even though it passed out, the California Transportation Commission expressed some concerns that they're working with the author. And I know that the CTC is making a briefing So maybe they can dive into, they can share their perspective on that in their legislative update. Any questions on legislation before I hit on a couple of other issues and then be done? Okay. Then I'll just, many of you in this group have also submitted letters for and comments and surveys and gnashing of teeth related to SB 743 and the executive order, actually 1919. I am actually collecting those letters because so if you have access to one, you can just shoot it to me at bhiggins@calcog.org. I'm trying to line them up because a lot of you said slightly different things, and I'm trying to figure out all the contours where we are on that. So that would be just something that would help me personally. And then finally, I know that we'll have an update. I think it's Mr. Johnson that's making an update on the California Transportation Plan. And we've been actively watching that and monitoring that. And our big push this year is to get a little bit more clarification in the transportation plan itself that it is not a fiscally constrained document where our regional transportation plans are. And in this group, that doesn't mean a lot, but in the legislature, it means a lot because often what happens is that there's all these unfiscally constrained policies in the California Transportation Plan, and people turn to our regional transportation plans and say, why doesn't your plan have pricing or this or that? And the answer is we don't go through conformity and have to go through all that, but it would be nice if the California Transportation Plan laid that out clearly in advance so we didn't have to answer that question all the time. So I did take my moment to articulate a point of view in this meeting, but I'll stop there and take questions.
Any questions? All right, thank you, Bill. Appreciate it. CTC updates. Paul, are you there? You want to get us started?
Yep, I'm here. Good afternoon, everyone. So for this meeting, we are not recommending any positions on legislation. However, we do have some staff comments on SB 1351 that we'll discuss. So this is legislation by Senator Bell, which would authorize the issuance of revenue bonds backed by the SB1 transportation improvement fee revenues in the RMRA for the purposes of accelerating SHOP projects. The bill, when it was originally introduced in July, had assigned the commission the responsibility for selecting the projects and working with the treasurer on the bond analysis. It was amended late last week to change that to Caltrans. And so that's one issue where we, as the CTC, would like to have further discussions about the appropriate agency roles in the legislation. One other issue that I wanted to highlight for this group that might be of interest to you is because the bill is sort of restructuring some of the funds within the RMRA and taking some money and putting it towards some programs and other monies would be going towards others. It's not changing the overall dollar amounts that are going to different programs. That stays the same, but the color of money for different programs changes. And so this has an impact on the local partnership program. Right now in that program, for transit projects, we're able to fund essentially any type of transit projects. So we can do, subway lines, passenger facilities, we can do buses, we can do pretty much everything for transit. Because the fund source would change for the local partnership program as a result of this bill, we'd have less flexibility on the transit projects we could fund. So specifically, we would not be able to fund vehicles, rolling stock equipment, or zero emission buses. We wouldn't be able to fund those anymore in this program. And we have had agencies, both in the formula and the competitive, receive funding for those purposes. So we have had some conversations with the author's office and are hoping to get some amendments that could address this issue. I mean, again, it's really has to do with changing the color of money in the RMRA that supports this program. And with that, I can take any questions.
Hey, Paul, this is...
Dustin?
Yes. I have a question, if that's all right. Yeah. This is Dustin at OCTA. Before the bill was amended, we spent a lot of time trying to go down the statutory cross-reference rabbit holes as the bill would amend them, trying to understand exactly how the RMRA and the TIF sub-account interact. There's a lot of, I think you'll notice in 2032I, there's a lot of kind of commingling. This is the issue talking about the transit projects between the RMRA and the TIF sub-account. But the League and CSAC essentially got their amendment protecting LSR. But if you follow the cross-references, the overall funding level for LPP is, or the funding to LPP still comes from the RMRA. Is there any discussion of, or would you like to see additional protections for LPP, any of the other programs that are referenced in those other sections, the way the LSR is protected? Because essentially right now, think about like a catastrophic bonding event or a significant decrease in TIF revenues below what was projected, it's possible that the RMRA is the backbill for that. And so aside from the color of money, like you mentioned, is there any conversation about funding levels and the potential for SB1 programs to put at risk?
We haven't raised the funding levels issue. Yeah, we're aware, and with the original language, it was, I guess, unclear if local streets and roads in particular, the funding level might potentially be lower. The most recent amendments state that that's not intended to be the case. In terms of the other programs that kind of come off the top before the 50-50 split between SHOP and local streets and roads, they wouldn't, except for one exception for the Workforce Development Board, they wouldn't have access to the TIF revenues, which would go into a sub-account. So they would only get the gas tax. Now, I think given the size of those programs and how much gas tax revenue is coming in right now, I don't think there is an issue. Like in the very, very long term, I don't know. We haven't really looked at it. If gas tax revenues decline, I don't know how at what point in the future there could be. That's not, I mean, I guess that's not really something we've tried to project out or anything. We've kind of focused more on the color of money issue for the LPP.
Okay. Anything else? Any other questions for Paul? Thank you, Paul. Lori.
Hey, this is Bill. I'm actually interested, since maybe put Michael Johnson on the spot since he's here. What hasn't been explained to me, and I haven't had the conversation with the department how often, what's the need, why, just your perspective on that. I've been meaning to have that question. I don't know if, I know I'm putting you on the spot, maybe you don't have authority to make comments, but since you were involved in the asset management plan and stuff, I didn't know if you had a comment.
Bill, I'm not sure exactly what the question is. Could you restate it? There was a lot of conversation.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was trying to explain why I was bringing you into the conversation unexpectedly. I'm sorry. I was just, in terms of how will Caltrans use this? What types of SHOP projects? What's the need? Would you expect to tap out the money every year? I don't know. I just don't understand, and I haven't. It's mostly because I haven't researched or had the time to research what the true need is here. So maybe you could describe that and help us understand.
Yeah, but so the shop need in our last published plan was about double the amount of money that we have. So, and that's going to go up because our next plan, which we're actively working on for January 2021, will bring in the costs associated with mitigation of sea level rise and complete streets. And so this is going to add a considerable amount of additional need to the state highway system. So my guess is that the available shop funding will probably fall somewhere in the 30% of annual need. And at the same time that that's happening, you know, there's funding and revenue issues that are hopefully short term related to the reduction in fuel sales. That is last report was going to hit the shop to the tune of about $600 million a year for the next 2 years. So, you know, there's no shortage of work, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I mean, we develop projects and we have a set of projects that are available if for some reason, you know, something can't move forward, or if, projects, if we get better prices, because we are getting very competitive prices right now on all of our shop projects.
Yeah.
It seems to be a very good environment for bidding work. But yeah, I mean, we've had conversations with various legislative members about, our ability to use stimulus, and let's just say we could use a lot.
And I appreciate that, and I think that there is that. I just was also aware that the shop is such a big source of funding every year, and many of your projects are already, paid for over a period of years, and now you're building in a finance cost on some of those projects, where that would offset some of those lower bids. And I'm sure you're doing the analysis, and I'm sure that there's some value here. I just didn't know if you guys, how much analysis you've done.
We've done a fair amount. I don't want to get out in front of the department and get into the specifics, but we are looking at that with respect to, potential, pros and cons. I mean, there are certainly pros. You get some work done real quick, but you got to pay the piper in the end. And so, what does your downstream demand for resources look like at the time that you might be paying back, borrowed money plus interest?
Yeah, and Bill, the legislation as originally introduced sort of didn't have a specific timeline, but the amendments from last week would require within 90 days of its passage for Caltrans to identify the projects for bond funding.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I see there's a question in the chat from Rachel Morricone on how the debt service would be paid. Essentially, it would come out of the shop portion of the RMRA. So to the extent that there's debt service, that bonds are issued and there's debt service, that would come out of that shop 50% pot of the RMRA. So it'd be, essentially in the future, less shop money there than otherwise, because some of it would go to the debt service.
Thanks, Paul. I'm just remembering, there's Rachel, Stephen Keck graphic from a few years back where it showed how much money was coming off the top through these truck weight fee loans to then backfill what were supposed to be GO bonds and the STIP and local street and roads programs kind of taking a hit because of that. So if it is just coming out of the shop program, I think then Mike's issue with, well, what are you going to need 10 years down the line kind of comes into play also, to make sure you're being really thoughtful on how you're using those bond funds. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, it's not new money, it's accelerating money from the future, essentially. So there would be less kind of money in the future than otherwise.
All right. Anything else? See anything? Lori, you're up. 18.
Okay. So we're just going to talk about two things on the ATP. I'm going to talk about the quick builds, and then Beverly will talk about the evaluators for the regular ATP program. So for the quick build pilot program, we received 22 applications. We are reviewing those now, and the staff recommendations for those will be out on September 15th. So just a couple of things that we're finding on those. It's pilot program, so we're learning different things. And one of the things that we've learned is that our guidelines maybe should have been a little bit more specific on exactly what's a quick build and not a quick build. We have some projects that came in that are not really quick builds. So what we're going to do is determine those and contact those agencies as soon as possible and let them know. And then there might be a few other ones that they're good projects. We have some questions about them, so we may contact the agencies. We feel like since this is not something we would normally do in the regular ATP, but because this is a pilot program, we feel like we have a little bit more discretion to work with the agencies a bit more before we make our final decisions. So that's all I had on the quick builds. Are there any questions before Beverly talks about the evaluators? Okay.
Thanks, Lori. Hi, everyone. So as you probably know, the ATP application deadline is about a month away, and we're currently finalizing our evaluator teams. And I know a lot of you are already evaluators, so thank you. But we do need some more alternates. So every cycle, some conflicts arise with our evaluators, and we rely on a long list of alternates to fill their spot if they drop out. And we usually end up using most of our alternates. So if you're interested, just please reach out to me, or if any of your colleagues are interested, please reach out to me. We would really like to see more representation, especially from the Central Valley and more rural areas of the state. So just send me an email, and my email is really long and hard to spell, so I'm just going to put it in the chat feature for everyone, and you can also find it on the ATP page of the CTC website. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, great.
Thank you.
Well, I hope to hear from some people.
You will. Alicia.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. So this is, there's going to be a couple of updates under this right now. So for local streets and roads, fiscal year 2021, as you all know, we were able to extend the deadline for initial eligibility. We pushed it out to July 15th from May 1st. And by July 15th, we had 521 out of the 539 jurisdictions submit for eligibility, so they are reflected on our book item and in the list. And there are 18 cities that are remaining. We have confirmed with all 18 of those cities that they will be seeking subsequent eligibility by September 30th, and so that would be adopted at our October meeting. One thing to remember is that no one will have a reduction in their funding amount that they will end up by receiving. And they will just have their funding delayed by when they start receiving their first disbursement. So first disbursements go out in September. With the October adoption, those 18 cities will receive their first disbursement in November, and it'll make up the September and October payments along with that. So with the May revise of the budget, we know that we have dropped in funding for the local streets and roads program. It went from a little over 1.2 billion for fiscal year 1920, and it's dropped down to roughly 1.118. And the same goes for the 2020-21 estimate. So that's dropped down. We'll know the exact amount by August 22nd. We'll know exactly how much all of the cities and counties have received. Which brings me into our next item. Many of you have requested an update on local streets and roads maintenance of effort requirement relief, or potential relief that could come of this as a result of COVID-19. So back in March, the League of California Cities had sent in a letter to the administration, and CalSTA received that as did we, and it was asking for a 25% reduction across the board for the jurisdictions in the way of MOE relief, which is their general fund expenditure amount that they're required to spend in order to maintain and continue to receive their funding. And this started conversations. We were requested by CalSTA to meet with a specific group, which consists of the League of California Cities, CSAC, so the California State Association of Counties, California Alliance for Jobs, as well as Transportation California, to have sort of these initial discussions on types of possible relief that could come out. And so we've met with them. Our most recent discussion was on August 5th. And really, there's no final recommendation that's come of this as of yet. Everybody does agree that there is a need for relief. Since 1920 has already closed, all the funds have already been spent. One of the recommendations that seems to have a little bit more of the support at this time is to basically suspend the MOE impacts, right, for the 1920 fiscal year, meaning anyone who was on the cusp that didn't meet their MOE requirement on their 18-19 reporting year would not be subject to a withhold if they failed to meet it in the 1920 year. So this essentially means that everyone else would start, or all cities and counties would actually start with a clean slate come 2021. And then the relief potentially could be a proportional relief based on revenue loss impacting their general funds. So what we're trying to find out now, and we're going through data sets and information, is what potentially could be used to determine what's used to determine the proportional relief and by what percentage. So that's where we're at. We're hoping to have something a little bit more finalized as a recommendation by the end of the month, if not in early September. So we're really working hard on this, and we just wanted to make sure that everyone was updated. And as a reminder, it's not under the purview of the Commission. We have no legislative authority in regards to maintenance of effort, and so all of this would have to be done either legislatively or by executive order. And then to my next item regarding short line rail improvement program. So we sent out an email to the RTPAs asking just to update who would be a contact person if a short line rail were to express interest and look for support in your nomination on a project that they're nominating. And if you could provide just who that person would be if you have a short line rail in your area. We provided a list. Just to clarify, this isn't a list that the CTC has created. This is a list of short lines and detail provided about the short lines from Caltrans. And it's specifically for the California Short Line Rail Association to share with their membership, and then it would also be shared with all of you. It's essentially their document. We're just working on their behalf to assist and get it all filled out. Caltrans did provide an update at our June, or oh my good Lord, what month are we in? July, in our most recent July conversation, July 28th. And in that, they stated that they are putting together sort of a initial application for short lines to be able to submit proposed projects to them for potential nomination and implementation. And that's all through Division of Rail and Mass Trans. I can share their contact information, and I strongly urge those of you with short lines in your area to sort of reach out to Caltrans and just see what they're doing and see how you all can work together to make this a seamless experience. Since it is a very new program and we've never done anything exactly like this before. Are there any questions on the items I covered?
This is Kenny. Maybe I can just have a quick moment to thank Alicia for your work on the Short Line Rail program, and also to plug everyone to have a look at that database or that Excel spreadsheet. I had a quick look at it and provided some comments, but would like to get the real person on the ground for those that might be managing it. And also wanted to thank Caltrans because they are really stepping up to come up with a process that would really work. And I'm hoping that a number of our TPAs can probably either piggyback or follow the same process. So thanks.
Okay.
Thanks, Kenny, for all of your hard work on this too.
Adrian?
Thank you. I wanted to just ask if in working on the MOE issue, if you've talked to any of the self-help counties. Most of us also have maintenance of effort in our measures and requirements that our local agencies have to meet an MOE requirement. So, I mean, in our case, we actually had to amend our ordinance in order to make an adjustment to how we calculate the MOE. So you might reach out maybe through the Self-Help Counties Coalition and see if there are other examples out there of recent changes that we've had to make related to the maintenance of effort requirement. It's just a suggestion. We might have something that you would, or that the state controller's office would find useful.
No, thank you very much. I think the thing that we're really struggling with is that the way general fund is tracked and calculated from the data that we're able to receive, and that is available to all parties to identify general fund that goes to counties versus what goes to cities, are very, very different. And it's become sort of an issue. So we're trying to find something that would be applicable across the board and so that we don't have separate standards. And we have talked to some of the self-help counties, and I definitely need to follow up to find out what the final actions have been and the way you've gone about amending the MOEs. But no, thank you again for the recommendation. It's just a tough one because it's so many and it's separate. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, thanks.
Thanks.
Teresa.
Sorry, I just got sidetracked. Hello, everyone. And well, I'll be reporting to the commission that the STIP share balances were released to the regions, to you all, on August 1st. If you got a chance to look through your county, make sure all the numbers align with your records. Let me know if there's any discrepancies. I haven't heard anything, so I'm assuming it's a perfect book, like every year. Unfortunately, I will not be able to unfortunately, I will not be able to do hard copies. Thanks again to COVID. COVID is definitely ruining everything for us. And so we're gonna have to be looking at it online. So the other thing I wanted to report was I see that you have allocation capacity later in the agenda, and Keith will go over the capacity that he will be reporting, and I will probably make comments afterwards because he will be talking about the STIP capacity and how tight we will be this year. And the last thing I just wanted to say is that we have a new team member that joined the CTC. Her name is Casey Ruggiero, and she will be working on the transit programs and the STIP. So I have a new partner, and so hopefully one day you all get to meet her. She worked for Caltrans for a number of years at budgets, and so that's it. I don't have anything else.
Thank you. Dawn?
Thanks, Yvonne. So my update is really just on the number of applications we've received for our competitive programs over the last couple of months. And we did release an updated book item today to replace the one that was published on the 31st. So basically, in summary, we've received 152 project applications with a $3.7 billion request amount, and we only have $1.7 billion available for programming. So there's lots of need out there, lots of applications to review. The programming team at the commission is extremely busy getting those applications reviewed and scored. So we still are on track to release staff recommendations for trade corridors, congested corridors, and LPP on November 12th. And as Lori already mentioned, the quick build staff recommendations on September 15th. So I'd be happy to take any questions if anyone has any.
Anybody? Thank you, Don.
You're welcome.
Bridget?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bridget Driller with CTC staff. And at tomorrow's commission meeting, I will provide a brief verbal presentation on the CTC's equity efforts. I am planning to highlight our internal training and education activities, as well as provide an update on the Equity Advisory Roundtable the Commission is planning to convene. The Equity Advisory Roundtable is envisioned to bring together 15 to 20 equity experts and practitioners from throughout the state. Roundtable members would collaborate with Commission staff over a series of virtual meetings to develop recommendations to the Commission related to specific equity activities, such as community listening sessions and whether the Commission should form a standing equity advisory committee. Staff will ask the Commission to approve a list of recommended membership areas included in Attachment A of the book item. The membership areas serve to identify critical equity subject matter expertise that should be included on the roundtable. Laura Pennybaker, who is unfortunately out of the office today, has been reaching out informally to staff at several regional agencies for recommendations for individuals or organizations that might be a good fit for the roundtable. We will continue to collect recommendations for another week or so before narrowing in on a list. So we would welcome any additional recommendations that you might have. You can send those to me and I will put my email address in the chat momentarily. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions? I'm just trying to understand what you're doing before I ask any questions. I was quite honestly, I was at a loss of what this even was. So
the equity advisory roundtable.
Yeah.
So I think to put it maybe in more simple terms, we've been getting a lot of pressure from a lot of the advocacy organizations that frequently comment at commission meetings to create a standing and long-term equity advisory committee made up of community-based organizations and nonprofits. I think our leadership is open to that idea, but not ready to quite commit via a formal vote. And so this roundtable will be a similar concept, but will be just a series of several meetings to kind of answer the question about long-term what the CTC's equity strategies should look like.
What was the problem to drive this from the advocacy groups? Like what isn't the transportation community doing that's driving the need for this? That's what I don't understand.
Yeah, I think that we get some feedback that certain individuals or perspectives aren't as present in the process, the transportation planning and decision-making process. So there's a desire to sort of elevate those voices, either having like an item on our commission meeting agendas, or a way that they could provide formal input into the process, kind of similar to the way that a group like this would.
Okay, I'd be interested in participating because all of our programming decisions are from our long-range plan that, you know, I'm sure all of our agencies have to have a public participation plan, an engagement plan, to be inclusive, and the projects are driven from the ground up. So this is just throwing me off. Anyway, thank you so much for presenting. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, did anybody else have questions? All right, moving on. Caltrans updates. Keith.
Yes, Yvonne, this is Keith Duncan, Caltrans Division of Budgets. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, great. Well, first, good afternoon and happy Tuesday to everybody. Tomorrow during CTC meeting, we'll be providing a brief summary of the activities that took place as we closed the 19-20 fiscal year. A quick summary for everybody here. Through June, the Commission allocated about $5.7 billion, and that equates to about 80% of the total $7.1 billion capacity that was available during last year, and that was allocated across almost 960 projects. The SHOP program hit their mark, they 100% allocated for the year. The STIP about 86%, and the various other programs range anywhere from 40 to 65% of their available capacity. The good news of that roughly $1.4 billion that was not allocated last year, that does carry over. So funding is not lost. So it'll be carried over and added to the draft allocation capacities that we presented in June. So in total for next year, the current new fiscal year of 2021, the recommendation for tomorrow will be a total of a little over $7 billion across all programs. The SHOP at about 3.3, Teresa hint on. The STIP, we're looking at about 586 million. ATP, congested corridors, TCP, TIRCP, Aero, LPP, and bonds, pretty similar to what we had for the prior years, as compared to the prior year. No major changes, although we do understand, as Teresa had mentioned, the STIP they may come close to being overcommitted given the current program. An item that we will be sharing, given the COVID-19 pandemic and the shutdown orders that happened through March and April of last year, a question was posed, how did last year's allocations compare? What was the trend? Did allocations slow down as we were ending the fiscal year? And in comparison, we actually show that from March through June, there was actually a sharp increase in the number or in the amount allocated by the Commission. Part of that is the dedication to both our local partners, Caltrans, CTC, to deliver on the allocations even during the shutdown. So we'll have a slide showing how the allocation trends from this past fiscal year compared to the prior 2 years. Let's see here. Coming over the next couple months, obviously the normal August redistribution. The last we heard is we're expecting the end of August is when we'll hear redistribution amounts for California. And then obviously with the FAST Act set to expire at the end of September, we're eagerly awaiting to see what may be occurring from there. That's about it. I'm open for any questions.
Any questions for Keith? That is pretty impressive, coming strong March through June. Well done.
Thank you very much.
Michael, MJ.
Good afternoon. I have one agenda item tomorrow. The Commission had asked that I come in and talk about what are called supplementary assets and their performance targets. So these supplementary assets are sort of ancillary components of the highway system, things like pumps and highway lighting and overhead sign structures and roadside rest areas and weigh scales, things of that nature. It's been a number of years since the Commission adopted those targets, and there's been a decent amount of turnover, and so this is just an informational item to talk about these items, go over the targets and answer questions from the Commission. So no action there. I did want to just use this platform if I can for 20 seconds to just remind folks that we are hosting a webinar on Thursday morning from I believe 10 to 11:30. 10 to 11:30, and we have invited all MPOs and RTPAs and county transportation leadership to talk about what's called our mid-performance or midpoint performance report. So this is a federal requirement that the state of California provide a progress report 2 years into our 4-year asset management plan. And so on Thursday, we will be going over the current conditions of pavements and bridges on the national highway system, both owned by Caltrans and owned by cities and counties in California. We have an October 1 deadline. So we're looking to get some I guess, awareness of the cities and counties of how things are trending. Spoiler alert, they're not trending so great. And then to get some potential narrative about COVID impacts for our mid-plan performance report. So that's Thursday morning from 10 to 11:30. So hopefully you all have got that invitation, or someone in your organization has got that invitation through your respective executive directors or public work directors. So that's it for me, Ivan.
All right. Any questions for Michael? Anybody? Thank you, Michael. California Transportation Plan, John Thurston. Or Francis Dea Sanchez. Caltrans on the California Transportation Plan or the Interregional Transportation Strategic Plan? Ooh.
Ivan, I mean, I'm certainly not one to talk about CTP 2050, but my understanding is that Jeannie Wardwaller will be attending to provide sort of a status update of CTP 2050 for the first item. I can't really speak to your second item.
Yeah, okay, thank you. They confirmed too on participating today. Don't know what happened. So Michael, you want to talk about the CTP?
There's not much that I could tell you other than that that our division of planning has been working on it, and Jeannie will be presenting the kinds of you know, some of the themes that will be in the plan.
There's nobody in the wait room, right? Let me just confirm. No? Nobody. All right, moving on. Executive Order N1919. It's just a follow-up on the CalSTAT workshop held, I think it was last Friday on July 31st. If anybody has any comments or what do you guys think of Darwin's presentation to the group? Any final thoughts? One thing that I'll be communicating to the commission is the common denominator seems to be increased participation, increased engagement, not one size fits all, that sort of stuff. You know, some agencies are going to be more in favor of it than others. I know there's some significant concerns from the rural counties, but my comments will be increased engagement. I will be requesting a workshop ahead of the November joint commission meeting with California Air Resources Board and HCD, hoping for, what is that, October? Is that the next one? Before the November joint one. Does anybody have anything to say about it or thoughts?
Hi, thank you, Yvonne. I appreciate the opportunity to help provide input into how our discussions and reception have been advised, and Appreciate your including the use of the phrase that there's some differences of opinion or varying opinions between the different agencies, and just because, as you know, Metro has several board positions that are in support of some of the various strategies being put forward under the executive order implementation plan. So thank you very much for that. And I know that there are a lot of folks that have a lot of concerns and have different board policies. So I just appreciate you, representing us all.
Okay, anybody else? All right, well, that's a wrap on anybody have anything not on the agenda? All right, break's over. Get back to work.
Oh, I'll bring something up, Yvonne.
Oh, so close.
Anyone
okay.
that's not interested in bridges can leave. Hey, so I've mentioned this in the past. I serve on a committee that's not considered an RTPA committee, but ought to be. Actually, I'm an alternate to Ross, and we're doing stuff. We're proposing changes to local assistance that would result in changes to the highway bridge program. I understand local assistance is not talking about it yet because there's still not really a proposal to share. But if you guys haven't heard me say it before, the bridge program is really suffering in terms of having too many projects and not enough money. And the direction it's going is worse. So I'm not on a, it's not an RTPA committee, but it's a report you guys should be hearing on a pretty frequent basis.
All right. I do appreciate Robert Peterson earlier saying comments were received and they are incorporating those comments. So stay engaged, be involved, submit your concerns or support. Anyway, thank you all.
Yvonne, thanks for getting the meeting done really fast. You seem very relaxed, but you are incredibly efficient. So I'm a fan.
That's enough. Anybody else? I'm kidding.
Yes, this was one of the shortest meetings in years, I think. This is great.
You're going to be the best moderator ever.
Yeah. You're lucky this is remote and none of you can buy me a drink.
Yeah, are we having remote happy hour now?
We will. And is anybody from, where's Philip from? San Bernardino? Is anybody from San Bernardino online?
Yes, this is Vanessa.
Is that it? Not it, but anybody else? Philip's not on, right?
I don't.
Vanessa's not good enough.
Oh. prefer Vanessa. No, okay. Just to let you all know, I did reach out to Philip's wife. I will be having a plaque made inviting Philip for a happy hour. He will not know about the plaque. His wife's going to hopefully walk in, give him the plaque, and then we'll just toast to him, because I'm already regretting serving as moderator. It's so much time.
Late, man.
So anyway, so Vanessa, that's coming. Everybody here appreciates everything Philip did for the last year. So, but don't tell him. It's a secret. Anyway,
Thanks for doing that.
Adios.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Yvonne. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you all.